I never want it to come off as me being ungrateful for the opportunities I have. I can also be having the greatest time and simultaneously wishing people would stop sending me death threats.
Rachel Zegler had hoped to quiet her critics, but instead, she set off a firestorm. In a now viral video filmed from what looked like her bedroom, the Snow White star stared into the camera with a blend of frustration and defiance. Fighting. Back tears and brimming with barely concealed irritation, she declared that despite the backlash, fans still show up and support her work. Her tone flickered between emotional vulnerability and pointed indignation as she defended her performance and confronted the ongoing wave of negativity surrounding the film.
The winged victory came to the Louvre in pieces, and people still line up to see her. And I can only hope that despite my flaws, and despite my cracks and my breaks, and there are many of them, that at every premiere and everything I do, people will wait in line to see her.
She spoke with the confidence of someone determined to reclaim her narrative, but the internet had other plans. Within minutes, clips from the video spread like wildfire. TikTokers quickly stitched it with reactions that ranged from stunned disbelief to full-blown comedy skits, turning her message into meme material almost instantly.
Excuse me, your curtain. Please allow me to help.
Help? From you?
I didn't mean to offend. I just thought you should know that.
That I should know what? That some privileged white guy thinks his opinion matters? Get over your entitlement. I'm not some damsel in distress waiting for you to ride in on your high horse.
Meanwhile, X, formerly Twitter, plunged into full-blown chaos. Instead of delivering the redemption arc she was hoping for, Rachel had unknowingly handed her critics a goldmine fueling a frenzy of hot takes, memes, and brutal takedowns.
Snow White, budget $250 million, box office $43 million. Oh, but it's only been 2 days, give it a chance. No, I'm not gonna give it a chance. I'm not even talking about that number. It's like all the flops are unsurprising at this point. Something is going on behind the scenes with almost every major animation, video game, and movie studio. That they're doing this intentionally or something. I don't f***ing know. I'm not even gonna talk about this. People are like, oh wow, Snow White flopped. Who is surprised? You cast arguably the least genuine, most out of touch, and disliked person in her industry, and her industry is Hollywood. And the bad guy is Gal Gadot.
The hashtag said it all Snowflop was trending. What was meant to be a heartfelt defense came off as tone-deaf, self-centered, and disconnected from the film's actual reception. For many, it wasn't surprising. In fact, plenty of people online had been waiting for this exact moment to pounce.
Right guys, I watched Snow White, so you don't have to. Let's get into it. Now first things first, Snow White gets her name not from the fairness of her skin, as we obviously know. Rachel Zegler would be a miscast in that sense. Instead, she gets her name from surviving the snowstorm. Her father and mother are king and queen to a utopian communist society. I'm not joking, guys. Everybody shares and is mindful of what each person is getting, and we spread our resources evenly, which is where this idea of fairness, as Snow White is the fairest of them all, is really presented in the film.
Some even celebrated the fallout. Screenshots of review bombs, endless meme threads mocking her "don't need a prince" comments, and out-of-context clips from old interviews resurfaced like clockwork, fueling the backlash and piling onto the storm she'd hoped to calm.
I'm a narcissist. Original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her. Weird. And then it became like, I will elbow everyone out of the way to play the part. And people will assume it's a love story just because like we cast a guy in the movie, Andrew Burnap. All of Andrew's scenes could get cut. Who knows? It's Hollywood, baby.
I say, if I'm gonna stand there 18 hours in a dress of an iconic Disney princess, I deserve to be paid for every hour that it is streamed online.
And we absolutely wrote a Snow White that is
not gonna be saved by the prince.
She's not gonna be saved by the prince, and she's not gonna be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be.
What was meant to be a fairy tale comeback quickly turned into a digital witch trial. And in the eyes of many, the villain wasn't the evil queen, it was Rachel herself. The internet hadn't forgotten the earlier interviews where she casually dismissed the original 1937 Snow White as weird and creepy, a comment that only added fuel to an already growing backlash.
There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her. Weird.
And then came her dismissal of the film's romantic core as outdated, clips that aged like milk. But the backlash wasn't just noise. It showed up in the numbers. Snow White opened with a surprisingly weak $45 million at the domestic box office, a disappointing figure for any Disney live-action remake, especially one tied to the legacy of the company's first animated classic. The comparisons were immediate. The Little Mermaid, despite its own controversies, brought in a strong $95 million during its opening weekend. Box office analysts were more than concerned. They were stunned. Some called it Disney's biggest miscalculation in years. Others simply labeled it a flop. The fallout was swift. Major theater chains began removing Snow White from their biggest screens, replacing it with higher-performing titles. Some locations dropped the film entirely by its second week. For Disney, a company known for dominating theaters, this was unfamiliar ground. For Rachel, it became a very public unraveling. Even the full force of Disney's marketing machine couldn't rewrite the story once audiences had turned away. And then came the Oscars.
Please welcome Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot.
Visual effects push the boundaries of what we see on screen.
Their work makes the impossible seem possible.
With breathtaking ambition, they create magic that wraps its arms around our wildest imaginations.
Here are the nominees for Best Visual Effects.
What was meant to be a celebratory moment turned into something far more uncomfortable. Rachel Zegler walked the Oscars red carpet alongside co-star Gal Gadot, but the tension between them was hard to miss. Photos and videos showed a clear lack of warmth. Gal stood stiffly during press appearances, barely acknowledging Rachel and avoiding eye contact. Viewers noticed immediately. Body language experts and gossip blogs quickly picked up on what Disney had likely hoped to downplay. These two were no longer on good terms. Insiders later confirmed the speculation. While Gal was contractually required to promote the film, she had since chosen to quietly distance herself from both the project and its lead. The contrast was striking. Gal's reputation remained spotless. She continued landing roles, signing brand deals, and appearing at industry events without controversy. Rachel, on the other hand, seemed increasingly isolated, praised only by a small group of loyal fans while drowning in public criticism. Her Oscars appearance was meant to steady the ship. Instead, it solidified her image as the face of the film's failure. The goodwill she had earned from her breakout in West Side Story had evaporated. Her efforts to modernize a beloved classic felt dismissive rather than fresh. Where audiences once saw confidence, they now saw arrogance. What should have been her defining lead role had become the moment that fractured her public image and possibly her career. Rachel's viral video may have sparked the storm, but the tension had been building for months. Once the disappointing box office numbers came in, the internet went into overdrive. Clips from earlier interviews resurfaced, showing Rachel rolling. Her eyes at the original 1937 Snow White, calling it weird and outdated, dismissing its romance and insisting her version would be nothing like it. Instead of praise for a modern retelling, she was mocked for disrespecting a cherished film. The criticism didn't just come from fringe voices. Longtime Disney fans, the ones who buy the merchandise, visit the parks, and attend opening weekends, felt insulted. Parents said they wouldn't take their children to a movie led by someone who openly disrespected the original. Grandparents posted online about the emotional impact of the original and their lack of interest in a remake from someone who seemed to hold it in contempt. Even casual viewers began to turn. People criticized not only the content of Rachel's comments, but her attitude throughout the press tour. Words like smug, entitled, and out of touch filled comment sections. And while many celebrities find support during a backlash, Rachel faced it alone. No public support from co-stars, no directors stepping in, no fellow actresses offering words of encouragement. The silence was loud and telling. That silence turned into real consequences behind the scenes. Insiders reported that Rachel's future projects were being reconsidered. Studio conversations that once revolved around her potential had slowed down. Marketing teams questioned whether she could still headline a major campaign. Could she still draw an audience, or had her name become tied to controversy and failure? Hollywood has always operated on perception, and Rachel, once seen as a rising Gen Z star, was quickly becoming a cautionary tale. Her rise had been swift. Yet, Golden Globe, the approval of critics, and praise from Spielberg all pointed to a promising future. But with Snow White, all that momentum came to a halt, and the timing could not have been worse. In today's climate, where audiences are more vocal and willing to boycott stars, they feel disconnected from Rachel's backlash became a symbol. To some, she represented everything wrong with reimagining classics. To others, she embodied celebrity, arrogance. People weren't just ignoring the movie, they were rejecting her. Sources say Rachel's team is in damage control mode. Publicists and agents are reportedly trying to pitch her for redemption interviews and softer press features. But rebuilding trust in a digital age where nothing is forgotten is no easy task. Viral clips don't vanish, and first impressions are hard to undo. The road back requires humility or likability. So far, Rachel has shown little of either. She's remained defiant, lashed out, and refused to budge. And with every move, the window for a comeback shrinks. Some in the industry are already calling it. Rachel Zegler, once positioned to lead Disney's next major franchise, may now be remembered for one of the most stunning career collapses in recent memory. Not because of one film, but because of the choices she made when the spotlight was brightest.